Hello, folks. So here's your little exercise for the week that I'm away, and I know that you all enjoyed the texting that we did last time. So we're going to have a little play with some more text, but also going to do this is kind of like a two-parter. The first bit really easy, and then we're going to kind of add into it a little bit more complicated technical things. So just kind of go as much as you can, and then when you finish messing around with the text, what I've also got for you is going to show you how to change a statue. This was actually a stone statue, and we would turn it into gold. So I'm going to show you how to do that as well. So there's a text example. There's another one. This is what we're going to do today. But then if you want to, you can go and add some sort of drop shadows on there and everything. So this is the picture that I've sent you, and this is the one we're going to work with. So if you want to go and get all these pictures, or get this picture into Lightroom, into your folder, and then we're going to open that in Photoshop. So here we go. Here's the image in Photoshop. And the first thing we need to do is go and add some text. So to go and get the text tool is over here. You can press the letter T to get to the text tool. And once you've got the text, you've got your normal sort of properties over the top here, and you want to go and choose a text that's quite sort of rounded, quite kind of chunky kind of thing. If you select your text, I've got Arial rounded MT. Everybody should have that one. And then I've got regular. And you want to go make this as big as possible. So in this case, I've gone right the way up to 72 point, and then come over to the color, and you want to go and find yourself a nice sort of gold kind of color. We can adjust this afterwards, but get yourself a nice gold color there. Okay. And then as soon as you click inside the document, then you'll get the text, and we can go and type. So I'm just going to type gold. There we go. In fact, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Let's go capitals, because all the other ones were small. So I'm just going to go capitals. So you can see a nice round font. Now, don't go and fill the frame, because if we're going to put shadows on and various bits and pieces in there, then you don't want to. You want to be able to move it around a bit and give yourself a bit of space. Okay, so once you've got the text, you've written that, and we're going to click OK. And now the next thing to do is our text layer. Remember from previously, if you double click on a text layer, it will select the text for you. There we go. And we need to go into the effects for the text layer. So you come down here to the bottom where it says FX, click on FX, and the one we want is bevel and emboss. Okay, and you can see here that it's actually picked up my styles from previously. So just so that we can start in the same place, I'm just going to click reset to defaults, and that's now the default setting. So that's probably what you should see. So the next thing we need to do is come to the properties for this, making sure that we're on the bevel and emboss tab here at the top, and then you've got these various bevels and embosses. There you go. And the one you probably want to go with is probably the second one down, the inner bevel, and you want to go and choose smooth. If you go and choose hard, you'll see you get a hard edge on those, a harder edge. So we want to go and choose smooth. So inner bevel and smooth. And the next thing that we're going to do, you've also got the option of up and down. I'll just click on those. The best thing to learn with these guys is just to kind of go and play with them and see what they do. And we've got the depth. So this is kind of the roundness of it. So you can see if I bring that up, it kind of puts the shadows a bit more defined. And then you've got size, and you can see there, if it's at 0, there's kind of no round. So what we want to do is we want to make it kind of round. There you go. So probably for my size text, this is 72. Then we're looking around about 24. I'm not going to soften it any. I'm going to keep it around about 24. Okay, so we're not looking bad. But the next thing we need to do then is it's kind of getting there, but we kind of need to do a little bit more to it. We need to kind of make it look metallic. At the moment, it doesn't look metallic. So To make it metallic, we need to put some gloss on there. Oh, by the way, you can actually move your light around the angle of the sort of light around here. So I'm just going to go at about sort of 2 o'clock-ish, 1 o'clock-ish, 2 o'clock-ish. Okay, and then we need to come down here where it says gloss contour, click on that. And the one you want to choose, well, I'm going to have a play with, all of these kind of thing. You'll see you get slightly different effects. So just have a little play, but you'll probably find that the best one is one of these down here at the bottom. Um, the quite sort of chunky ones. So I think one of these two, kind of like a range of mountains, if you like. Okay, you see that gives it quite a nice metallic effect. Which one shall we go for? Now I kind of remember that letter W kind of thing because it's going to come sort of aware a little bit later on. So you can click on that. Now we could click on OK, but I also want to add a little bit of drop shadow. So if I click on OK, I've got to come back into the effects dialog once again. So the easiest thing to do is just pop down here to where it says drop shadow, and we can now just add a little bit of a drop shadow on here, a bit of spread there. Tell you what, let me just return to defaults for you. There we go. So distance, and if you can see here, it kind of looks like the light's coming kind of from the top right because the shadows are here. So make sure you get the shadows going in the right place. Bit of spread there, and just play with the size. Just kind of move these guys around. You can see, you can kind of get it to be floating off the page a little bit there. That's kind of nice. So just play with these tools until you get where you want. You'll find the contouring won't make any difference now on this one, so just leave that the default. Good. So there we go. So that is super duper quick and easy to do your gold kind of colored text. So if you've done that bit, that's nice and easy. And now we can kind of go on from here and do something more interested if you want to. Now, from the previous exercise, I know that kind of lot of people struggled with making the selections of the text. And we can change this text to a certain extent. So if you can remember from before, so if I just double click the text layer, things I could do previously was I could come up and I could kind of, so if I go say to Control T, that's the text there, and I can make it bigger. You can actually you've got what's called a scrubby slider. So if I just sort of move this, you can see I can make the text bigger here. I can space the letter in and that type of stuff. Yeah, I could obviously change the color if I wanted to. So I can kind of do some things there. And so the important thing is this is a text layer. So this is a text layer. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to create a pixel layer so I can show you the difference. So we're going to double click, sorry, not double click, control click on the text layer. So you can see now that the text is highlighted. I'm now going to create a new layer, empty layer, by clicking on the plus layer down here. And we've got an empty layer and we've got an active selection. I'm going to fill that selection. So I'm going to go edit, fill, and I'm going to fill it with the foreground color. The foreground color is the color that we chose here, this gold color. I'm going to click OK. Right, now I've done that, I can press Control or Command D to deselect. Now let me just show you the difference between these two layers. This layer here, the top layer, the one on the checkerboard, is a pixel layer. So I'm just going to rename this. I'm going to call it pixel, just so that we know where we are. This is a pixel layer. This now, I cannot change the text on this or do anything to it. The layer below it is a text layer, and I could go in, highlight the text, and I could change the text. Okay, so what we're going to do is going to switch off the text layer. We're going to switch on the gold pixel layer, and we're going to copy the styles from this layer. Okay, so from the text layer, we're copying the styles. So come down here to copy layer style, go up to your pixel layer, click to the side, to the right, and we're going to go paste layer style. Okay, now it looks the same as this layer. If I just switch on and off, you can see it looks pretty much the same. It's doubled up, but it looks pretty much the same. But the important thing is this top layer is pixels and is no longer editable text. This layer is text and it remains as editable text. But I've got limited things that I can do with this layer. You know, I can do kind of things like remember we had the warp from previously. We could do things like, you know, arch it and stuff like that, which is kind of nice, you know, quite useful. Um, and all the little, I don't know, all the weird things that we could do. So we could do all that kind of stuff. And that's a text layer. Quite like that arch actually. Okay, let's leave that like it is for now. All right. And But let's just switch that layer off and now we can go to the gold layer. Now the benefit of the pixel layer is I can actually start to do more things with this because I can transform this. And what I can do is I can go Control T, that brings up the transform box. I can right click and I can choose, say, perspective. And now what I can actually do is kind of bring this in and make it look like it's kind of stood up a little bit. And I'm going to emphasize that in a minute. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to make it look like the light. We're going to put a shadow on here. So I've done that a little bit, and I might tell you what I might just do. Let's just go and distort it, and let's make it quite tall, shall we? There we are. Because now we can have a nice long shadow. There we go. And the shadows are down this direction here, you see? Because there's the light. So we'll click on that, click the tick. Now we've got a shadow at the moment, but the shadow is effectively only kind of looking down. Now, what I want to actually do is I actually want the shadow to kind of be longer than this. So I'm going to switch off the shadow layer. I'm now going to go back to the pixel layer. I'm going to press Control and click, or that's on a Mac, that's Command, and I've now made a selection. I'm now going to create another empty layer and I'm going to fill that selection with grey. So I'm going to go Edit, Fill, 50% grey and click OK. Okay, so now what we've got, now we can press Control D to get rid of that. So the reason we can't see the gold is because we've got a grey layer on the top. But actually, in fact, I don't want the grey layer on the top. I want the grey layer below the gold layer because the shadows will obviously be behind. So I'm going to drop the shadow behind the gold. And there's our shadow. Now, of course, at the moment, we can't see the shadow if we switch the gold layer on. But this is our shadow. Now, at the moment, this kind of doesn't look at all realistic. So what we need to do is we need to change the blending mode to something like color burn. Works quite well. We can change these afterwards, but let's try color burn, and that you can see that goes darker. Okay, because all the shadow is it will darken the color that is underneath it. So people think that shadows are grey. In actual fact, they're not. They're the darker version of what is ever underneath. Okay, so there's my shadow, but it's far too sharp. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and we're going to give this shadow a pretty good blur. We want to be able to read it still, but we just want to kind of soften those edges. And we can click OK. Again, we can go in there afterwards and change that a bit. So now we've got our shadow and making sure, and so we can see what we're doing, we're going to click activate the gold layer, gold pixel layer. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Let's rename the shadow to shadow. There we are. And we now need to alter the shadow. So we're going to go Control and T, which is transform. Right click and choose distort. And now what we can do is we can flip this. There we go. And we can now drag this down, and there you go. We've now getting a bit of a shadow. There we are, and we can distort this. We can bring this down a bit more if we want to. We can kind of make it look like the light's coming from a point, so the shadows are spreading out more. There you go. And what I might actually do is I might just move the whole layer up. So I'll just move that one up a touch, click OK, click on the gold layer, click on the move tool. Remember the shortcut for the move tool is the letter V. V, there you go. And let me just move that text layer up. There we are. And that is how you create your own shadows. So I suggest you take your time, pause the video, and if you need to sort of make this any softer, or what we can also do, if you think the shadow is too fierce, we can just come over to the opacity for the shadow, and we can just bring the opacity down. There you can see we can lighten that and such like. There, and we've got it now. It looks like the text is actually stood up and it's casting a shadow. So go and have a play with that, guys. Pause the video there, go and have a play with that, and then when you finish and you're happy, just come back. So just to recap, the important things are: make sure that you're on the correct layer, make sure that you are, if you're in text, then it's editable. If you're in pixels, then obviously it is still editable, but you can change the shape of it and that type of thing. Go and have a play, and then come back and I'll show you the next exercise. So welcome back. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a play, and we're going to create this gold thing here. Okay, so just pause the video for 1 second and we'll go and get the files for you. So here we are back in Lightroom, and this is, I've sent you this photograph as well. So we need to open this into Photoshop. So we're just going to right click, edit in Photoshop, or of course, and we obviously want to edit a copy because we don't want to overwrite our original. Edit, and there we have it now in Photoshop. Just close that one. That's a full size one. Okay, and I'll get rid of those, don't need those. So the first thing we need to do is, anytime we do anything like this, it's a good idea to create a duplicate of the background, just in case we make any mess of it, and we can come back and fix it. So the quick way to do that is we can press Control and J, and we have a duplicate of the background. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to select the subject, and we can use that. We use one of Lightroom's tools, sorry, Photoshop's tools, and we're going to click on the magic wand. The shortcut for this is W. And if you click in this tool here, you will actually get select subject will appear automatically. If you then click select subject, Photoshop will use its magical brain and try and choose the subject. And as you can see here, it did a good job, but it didn't quite get everything. It didn't quite get this bottom bit. So if you come back to your selection tools, go to the quick selection tool, and what you can actually do, making sure that you're on the plus setting here. You see you've got brushes across the top, making sure that you're on the one that says plus. Just come down here and you can just add to that selection so that you've got the whole of the statue. Just have a quick check round, make sure you've got it all, and we have. Now, it's a good idea just to put a very, very slight feather on. Just so it is quite a hard surface, so you probably get away with it, but I'm just going to put a very slight feather on. Now, what I tend to like to do is just so you don't get halos, on the selection, we're going to go to Select, Modify, Contract. That's going to bring the selection in very slightly by 2 pixels. Now you can barely notice it, but all it's done is just brought that selection in very slightly. We're now going to right click, I'm going to use feather, and we're going to feather by half that amount, so that's 1 pixel. And then we're going to press Control or Command J, and that will now put the statue on its own layer. And that slight softness just helps to sort of blend it in, otherwise it can be a bit too hard. And with the fact that we did the contract, the contract makes it sort of less chance of seeing the blue sky around it. Okay, so the next thing we need to do now is we need to make the statue monochrome, black and white. And the easiest way to do that is to bring up the hue and saturation. Hue and saturation is Control U or Command U. So Control U. And all you do is you bring the saturation all the way to the left. And that now has basically taken all the color out of the statue, because you notice that we're on the statue layer. We haven't decolorized the original because that's a color layer. Okay, and then the original background, obviously there just as a spare. Good. Now we've got our statue, but obviously it doesn't look at all metallic, and it's a stone one at the moment, and we want to change this to a metallic kind of look. Now you can actually do this just by pressing Control and M, and we're going to use curves. So Control and M is curves. And this might seem a bit weird, but if you remember when we did the text layer and we chose the contour, if you remember, the contour was kind of like the shape of the contour was kind of like a letter W, and that's actually what we want. So all we're going to do, you can see how you've got boxes here, you've got a grid, and it's going to be a bit weird, but we're going to click in the top corner of the grid there, and I'm going to pull down, then I'm going to click on another link, and I'm going to pull up, and then we're going to pull down again, and then we're going to go up again. So we're kind of making a letter W, and you can see that it kind of gives it this metallic look. And you'll notice that as you move these around, you can change how your picture looks. So at the moment it's kind of silvery, and we're going to sort that out in a moment. All right. So the next thing we need to do, now we can click OK here, and that would be absolutely fine. But the only problem with doing it this way is once I click OK, that is now set in stone, because I'm actually working on a pixel layer. Okay, so you could do this, but once you click OK, you've fixed it. So I'm actually going to press cancel. And the reason I'm going to press cancel is because we're going to do exactly the same thing, but we're going to do it on an adjustment layer. And that basically means that we can come back afterwards and tweak it if we need to. So we're going to choose a curves adjustment layer. Let's go back to the layers palette. Now, at the moment, if I've got a curves layer here, so this is a mask which we might need to play with, but this is the curves. So this is the mask, this is the curves adjustment. If I double click, it brings the curves up. But just watch what happens. If I do that same thing, can you see that it is affecting the whole image? Let me reset down here by clicking on the bendy arrow. We don't want to do that. All I want to do is I only want to affect this layer. So what we do is you click on the curves layer, you hold down the Alt or Option key, you hover between these two lines, see, and you get this bendy arrow, and you click. And what that has done is now you see that little bendy arrow there? It means that anything we do on this curves will only affect the layer immediately below this. I hope you got that. Okay, so clicking on the curves layer, double click to bring up the properties, and then we're just going to do the same as before, drag down, drag up, drag down, and drag up. And there we go. And basically now we can tweak these to our heart's content. And as we move around, you'll see that we can change how it looks. And we can actually fine tune this again a little bit later. I'll show you how to fine tune it later as well. There we go. Bring these down, you'll get more contrast. So basically a letter W. Good, great stuff. So back to the layers palette, we've now made it look metallic. Okay, so now we need to change it to gold. And to change it to gold, again, we're going to use a layer, so that we don't damage the original, we're going to come back down to adjustments, and we're going to go to solid color. And when we do a solid color layer, we need to now go and find a nice looking gold, and it might remember the gold from your previous exercise. So we'll go with that, and we click on that. Now, of course, the problem we've got at the minute is that's kind of everywhere. So what we need to do is we need to change what's called the blending mode. Oh, and again, we need to clip this. So let me just change the blending mode first. I'll show you. If I just change the blending mode to any of these, you can see that it's also affecting the background. So what we need to do is we need to again clip this layer to this layer. Now, last time what I did was I showed you the method where you press Alt or Option, hover between the two, and you can click on that line. There is actually another way. You can click on the layer and you can right click and you can say clip. There you go. And you can do it that way, create clipping mask. Okay, and you can see now that it's only affecting this kind of layer here. Okay, so now when we go change, and we could try these, and I think you find the best one is there. So it can either be overlay, it's going to be in this bunch here, overlay, soft light, hard light. That's quite nice. Vivid light, linear light. I quite like, for this particular one, vivid light. Okay, good. Now we're getting there. Still doesn't look absolutely spot on, so we need to do a couple more changes. And we can now, if we want to, we can actually go back into our curves again, and we can mess around with curves and do it this way. But I think an easier way, because you've gone to all that trouble to get that W, is come back to the top, go to another adjustment layer, this time choose levels, and again we need to just clip it, because again if we just work it now, let me just show you. If I just work it now, it'll affect the whole picture, which we don't want to do. Put that back to 0, reset. So what we need to do is we need to clip it back to here, and so you can right click and say create clipping mask. There we go, if that's easy for you. And now when I go to levels, double click and change this, you can see that it's only changing our statue. And so really what you've got to do is kind of have a play with these. Sometimes if you change the position of this, it works slightly differently as well. So let's just try that. Let's just bring it down to the bottom. Yeah, so you need to see now it changes where the, almost like where the light's coming from. So just to recap on that, what I did, it was at the top, it was up here. And all I did was I dragged it down so it was just above the statue. I just find it gives you a little bit more control if you do that. There we go. Kind of cool. And that is your gold statue. Now, if you think it's a bit too contrasty, again, what you can do is just nip back into your curves layer, and you can just tweak the contrast and the brightness to suit. It really is a case of whoops, daisies, not doing that. It's just really a case of playing around with these. There we go. Until you get it looking how you'd like it. And of course you can always go back into, because again we're on a adjustment layer, if you need to change the color of the gold, you can just come in, double click on the gold, and you can just come down here and you can change it to, you know, sort of more browny gold if you want to. It's up to you. There we are, and click OK. Good. So the great thing about doing this method is everything is adjustable because we're using adjustment layers. And likewise, if one of the things you wanted to do, say you wanted a black background instead of the blue sky, not a problem, because this is cut out. All I need to do is come below the cutout statue. Let's rename that to statue, shall we? There we go. Let's just call that statue. oops, call it statue 2. Call it statue, that's it. And go below the statue layer, click on the new layer icon, go to this layer, and again we can either fill it directly with a color, or we can put in a color layer. So I tell you what, this time let's do it differently. Let's just, this time we'll choose black. So I'm going to press D for defaults. So you can see now my swatches have changed to black. And I'm going to go edit, fill, going to fill with black. And now we've got a black background. If you want any other background, then obviously you could choose, you know, whatever color you wanted to, really. I don't know, sort of a rustic sort of brown, I don't know. There we go. Let me go to edit, fill, foreground color. There we go. Oh, that doesn't really work, does it? But the benefit of putting a color in there actually is that you can now go to that color, you can press Control and U for hue and saturation, and if we come into the hue slider, I can make that background whatever color I want. I think at the end of all that, I think I would just prefer the black, to be quite honest with you. So let me just do that again. Go edit, fill, and choose black. Okay, there we go. So recap from the bottom. We imported the image. Let me just switch the black layer off for a second. We imported the image. We selected the subject. We contracted the selection by 2 pixels. We feathered the selection by 1 pixel. We then pressed Control or Command J, and that put the statue on its own layer. We then created, we actually created a curves adjustment layer. So let me just switch this one off. There we go. We created a curves adjustment layer, and with the curves adjustment layer, we made the letter W. That gave us the metallic effect. We then needed to color that metallic effect. So we came down to the bottom again, and this time we chose a color fill adjustment layer, and we chose a gold color. And then to fine tune it at the end, we created a levels adjustment layer, which was originally at the top, and then we dragged that down and placed it just above the statue. So it was only affecting the statue. And for all of these layers, so that they weren't affecting the whole picture, they were only affecting the statue, we clipped them. And if you remember, the way we did that was by holding the Alt key down and going between the line and then clicking, and that they get this bendy arrow, which means that these layers are only affecting this statue. Now what we can do, just so we can switch the whole thing on and off quite easily, is we'll click on the top layer, we'll hold the Shift key down, click on the bottom layer, the statue layer, and then we'll come down here to where there's like a picture of a folder, click, and we've just grouped those pictures in. So what that basically means now is I can switch the group on and off, and there's the statue of stone and the statue as gold. Quite simple. Good. So please enjoy, and if you've got any questions, then drop me a message and I'll try to answer them for you. So I hope you enjoyed those 2 little text guys. Please, you know, feel free to have a good old mess around, try different things. So you can see here, you know, I did exactly the same thing, but had the light coming from this side and put the shadow there. I just used a different font, something finer, and I actually put a bit of a texture on this one just to kind of make that look different. And you can see here that using that same method, I can just use different colors, and I've got bronze and silver. There's the shadow. Okay, so I'll send you these 2 pictures and you can have a good old play, and I hope you enjoy yourself. So thanks very much, folks. All the best.